I didn't ask to come. What is this about, anyway? Don't tell me Brother Scrooge had a change of heart and left me his fortune. No, indeed. I honestly think you'll have to see. See what? Well, what I want to show you, Percy said. I don't think I can explain. How are you, anyway? You look well. Have you been... He searched for a word. Comfortable? I've not been arrested, if that's what you're asking. Percy flushed. I've a right to worry. I wish you wouldn't. I'm sure Matthew wished that too, Gil said. Bringing down the family name. Or at least the parody of it his father had bestowed upon him, since naturally the bastard son of a Laws should be dubbed Lawless. He had cared once about being marked out by his surname. Later, he'd wished to share Matthew's name only so that he could disgrace it. It would have served the swine right. I don't give a tinker's curse what Matthew thought, with due respect and all that. I'd just rather you had some other occupation. I'll do what the devil I like, Gil said, with the friendliest tone and the laziest smile at his command. Percy's look of concern faltered and faded. Gil felt a pulse of sour satisfaction that almost immediately turned to guilt. He oughtn't snipe at Percy. None of it was his fault, and he'd gone out of his way for Gil in the past. But he was still a legitimate Laws, and as such, Gil was damned if he'd listened to any requests, still less any criticism of his occupation. The Laws held far too much power over Gil for far too long in their several poisonous ways. He was damned if he was going to let them affect him any more. Wealdstone House was indeed warm, with fires blazing in every hearth, and lamps lit against the imminent twilight, since it was 3 o'clock when they arrived. Evidently, Jessame's old bones and faded eyes required plenty of candles and coals. It had been like that in Pa's time. He had never stinted on making his household comfortable. Matthew was probably turning in his vault. Gil had spent his childhood here under his father's carelessly affectionate eye. The old man might have played the fool or the knave with his housemaid, but he had never failed in his financial obligations to their son, and had formally acknowledged Gil his own when she died. That was more than many would have done. Gil had been christened with his mother's surname and inherited her looks. Pa could have well avoided presenting the county with a brown-skinned proof of his misbehaviour. Instead, he'd renamed his bastard to make quite sure there was no doubt, and taken him in, and Gil had lived at Wealdstone House when he wasn't at boarding school until he was 16 years old. Then his father had died, and Matthew had inherited, and Gil had never seen the place since. There are standing orders to the servants, Matthew's man of business had said. If you set foot on the property, you are to be whipped. Percy was looking at him as he handed his coat and hat to a footman. How does it feel to be home? This isn't my home. It's your home as long as I'm here, Percy said stoutly. That is not yours to decide, Percival. That was Horace, emerging from the drawing-room with a glass of sherry in his hand. The sombre black of his deep mourning garments did nothing for his cadaverous face. The world being what it was, Gil did not find it a matter of great practical convenience that he'd inherited his looks, complexion, and hair almost entirely from his mother, but infinitely better that than resembling this horse-faced misery. Wealdstone House is my father's now. I say this with the greatest sorrow for the tragedy that has made it so, and Gilbert is here at his sufferance. No, I'm here at his invitation, Gil said. So why don't you tell me why that is, instead of pretending you aren't delighted Matthew's shuffled off? You are a disgrace, Horace said, words dropping cold as stones. Have you no family feeling? Are you taking the piss? Gil asked, relishing the way Horace